Well, hey there, guys. This is a new tutorial just coming from a request from a student that wants to know how he can animate a Spider-Man flying through the city using After Effects and 2D animation. So it's a good question, and I'm going to walk you kind of through that here. Go ahead, and first thing you want to do, of course, is gather your assets. And, of course, create a proper folder. So I've got a folder here. I just named it Animating Spider-Man. I've got an Assets folder. I've got a Compositions folder. In this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to use After Effects to animate, but of course we have to make our compositions using Photoshop. So first thing I do is I typed in Spider-Man PNG, and you see it gives me an option here called Transparent. And what that simply means is that most of these should be properly already cut out and transparent. And I'm just going to find a Spider-Man here that looks like he's swinging. Maybe I'll just use this guy here where he's kind of already in a open pose. Let me go ahead and open that in a new tab so I can see it. Now he is not cut out here, but that's quite all right because I can still cut him out. So let's go ahead and save that image. And let's see here, let's go to, where am I saving this at? In my video tutorials, Animating Spider-Man and Assets, and I'll just call this Spider-Man. PNG. Now, in addition to that, of course, we're going to need a background. So we're going to need a city. Now, I can find a stylized, cartoonish city here. Let me go here, Spider-Man City Cartoon. And this is also one of those things you want to do is when you search for this, look for a larger version of the file, just because it's going to give you a better kind of image. And here's one right here. This should look pretty good, and it's fairly large. So let me go ahead. Open that in a new tab. It's nice and large, and let's go ahead and save it. So we have Spider-Man, and we have, hold on a second. That is not going to work because that is a web published file, so it's protected. So we're just looking for just the backdrop of a city, something large enough and stylistically fitting the style that we're going for here. Let's go with this one, maybe. That'll work. Let's see here. Save image as. And I'll just call this City BKG. Okay. Now then, let's go ahead and open up Photoshop. Okay, and in Photoshop, it's kind of good practice here to make a new file rather than opening the file. That way we can create the size of our composition that we need to do. So if we're animating, we'll say Film and Video. I'll say 1920 1080 and hit Create. And this will give me a blank file to then place our Spider-Man into. There we go. And you can see we could even, these grid lines are just there. It's called Action Title Safe. You can actually deactivate them by turning off your guides. They're just there temporary because we told it to be a video or for video. And I'm actually going to come in here and delete the background because we want transparent. Now we can place File, Place Embedded, our Spider-Man. Let's see here, Tutorials, Animating Spider-Man, Assets, and find Spider-Man. And it's going to get placed into this file at the 1920 1080. And it's just best practice to do that. And you can see there he is. Okay? Now, you'll notice, though, because we placed it, it actually is what's called a smart object. See this? It's got this little icon here on the file. What we need to do, of course, is select it and rasterize that layer to get rid of that smart object. And now we can take the Magic Wand tool, click on the white. Now, you got to make sure that you're clicking on just the white that's outside of it. You see, right now, it's currently selected the whites of his eyes. And what I can do is I can activate what's called contiguous here. And that means now when I click on, it's just clicking on the outer border of white. Now, me personally, I like to use the Select and Mask tool here to get a cleaner selection, mostly because when you select, it will often leave a fine little border of white around there. And I don't want that. And also, I've chosen the black and white to show me what I've selected and what I don't have selected. Now I'm going to come down, and I can do a few things here. For instance, I can add a little bit of feather, just a few little decibels here of feather. That will soften the selection, and I'm going to shift the edge to the right to select more, to push the border of my selection in towards Spider-Man so I don't get that white halo. I can then hit OK. So now you see I've got the marching ants going around, and I'm just going to delete and remove it, and then deselect. So he's now cut out from the background. Now, I can do a couple of things with this that I've shown in other tutorials where I could cut off his arms and heal him and almost make like a puppet out of him. So his arms are on separate layers, each of his legs are on a separate layer, his head's on a separate layer. But I'm not going to do that because I'm actually going to use what's called the Puppet Warp tool inside of Adobe After Effects to do the puppet animation. So all I need to do here is just save this as, and I'll call it Spider-Man. And instead of going into assets, I'll put it into composition here and just save it as a PSD file. All right. Now the background, I don't have to adjust it here. So I'm going to jump on over here to After Effects, okay? And type in New Project. I'll go to New Composition and make it be a 1920, 1080, and give it a length of time. Maybe I'll go with 12 seconds or something like that. Everything else is fine. And you see now, I turn off my transparency, you can see my file. Even though it appears as black, it doesn't mean it will be black. Now the first thing I'm going to do is come over here to my project folder. I can right click and I can import. I can go File and Import. Let's see, here's my folder. Okay, go into Compositions here, and I'm going to select the Spider-Man. Now, because he's only one layer, I can import him as footage, but if he was made up of multiple layers, like I separated his body parts, or I took a comic book page and I cut him out of that and then healed the background or something like that, I could actually just bring that in and bring it in as a composition to retain layer sizes. But right now, it's just a single layer, so I can import it as footage. Go ahead and import it, hit OK. And this gets me now the folder of our single Spider-Man, which I will simply just drag down into my project folder. Okay? Now, before I even start animating, let's go ahead and play around with Import, File, bringing in the city background. And that just brings in as one layer. Let's drop that on the bottom. And let's go ahead and just scale that up just so it fits the size that we're going for. Now, this is where I can play around and do some other things too. For example, the Spider-Man on top is kind of a blue light, or kind of doesn't really match the background here. So I could even come in and just do a quick little color correction. I kind of like using a photo filter here. And what that will help me do is allow me to add the color of the city, which looks like it's kind of a green-yellow. And you'll see now, as I adjust this density, it'll add a little bit of green to him. See? We preserve luminosity. And so now he kind of matches the world of the city there as far as color values. If he's too dark, for example, we could even go to a color correction here and play around with, well, brightness, contrast, or the levels. You see now, I can even make him be a little bit brighter. There we go. So he looks like he's actually in that background. Kind of like that. All right. Go ahead and minimize our effects. Go back to our project here. All right. Now, let me go ahead here and just increase this. Now, to animate him, okay, there's a few little steps. The first thing I'm going to do, of course, is figure out how he's going to swing into the frame. All right. And to do that, I don't currently have the web, of course, But what I'm going to do is I'm going to animate a little bit of a stroke of the pen to give myself the animation of the web to swing on. And to do that, I'm going to do Layer, New. Let's go with a shape layer. Okay, and now the shape layer is on top. And to do that, I'm going to come here and grab the pen. I can come over here and say Fill, None, Stroke. Let's go with something a little more on the color value of a web. Okay, and it's currently at 15 pixels, which is a little bit large. I probably should have that down there at about 3. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click drag and click drag. See? Just to get 2 points, clicked and dragged to create what's called a vector, a stroke, or a path. Now I can come here and say, yeah, you know what, maybe make it a little bit larger. 4. Let's go with 5. There we go. Maybe even 6 pixels in size. I'll go 7. Okay. Now, to animate this vector over time, okay, I'm going to come up here. I don't want to scale it. Hold on. I want to open up that, find that content of that shape, which gives me the shape here, and click on Path. That will allow me to select these guys here, these little nodes, so I can put them here. You can see I can change that. Okay, so let's have that one stay there. So what I'll do is open up the path and key it so that that little point is going to stay there at the beginning, and this point here is going to come over here, okay, at the beginning. And then somewhere down here at the end, I'm just going to move through time. Now I can put this secondary pin over here and make it be the correct angle of that path. And that should now give me, see, the illusion of the web swinging through. Okay, you see that swinging through. Let me go ahead and knock this down to about a half quality, just so it goes a little bit faster. And I'm going to make that stroke be just a little bit wider too. And there may even be a point here where, to accentuate, let's do that. I'll give this a little more follow through here, just so it's following the curves of animation. All right, so right there, just like that, I've got the beginning of the swinging web. Now, this is where I can start to keyframe and deform Spider-Man. So I'm going to select the Spider-Man. Go ahead and zoom in so I can see him a little bit better. I could even hide the city at this point because I really don't need it. Okay? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called the puppet work tool. So here it is at the top. It looks like a little push pin. And what I'm going to do is right here, okay, I'm going to pin. I might actually scale him down first. Let's do that. A little bit too large. There we go. See, maybe I'll turn on the black just so we can see him. There we go. Okay, and I can always make that thinner after the fact. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take with the puppet work pins, okay? In fact, he almost should be flipped. Let's see here. Let's flip him over. I'll just do it this way. There we go. So he's kind of facing the correct direction. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and pose him at this point in time. Maybe I'll go to clean number 2 second here. Here we go. Take this pin, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pin his arm or his hand, Now you see it's going to show mesh, and that's important here because it'll show what I can animate. I'll do his hand, his other hand, his head, his pelvis, knees, and feet. I'm not going to put elbows on him. Maybe I'll do shoulders as well. But I'm not going to do elbows because when he's swinging on the rope, all of his weight is pulling down. So we really don't need that. Now that I've put those pins in, I can start to pose him. See? So I'm posing him here. Maybe I'll take his head and lean his head back a little bit. Swing his hips. Bring the knee back. Kind of like this. You got to watch you don't warp them out too much, okay? Now this is also a problem here where I could probably come in and maybe have that arm or something to kind of block off so his hand, so the web is not, all in one place. Now that I've done that with him, okay, I can come back to those pins later. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the anchor point so that the anchor point is up where his hands are, because that's his center pivot, right? His body is going to pivot off his hands. Because that's what's connected to the rope. Okay, so it's now up there at his hands. Let's go ahead and position him just like so. And I can do a position key and a rotation key. Okay? Now let's go back in time. Now I can come in here. Go ahead and minimize. Okay? So I know that anchor point there needs to be at the web. I can rotate him. Let's rotate him that way. All right? So that now you can see where he's kind of going along the web. I'm going to add just a little bit more rotation so he's got a little more swing. Go ahead and move him here. Again, a little more swing. Go here. Now I'm going to have him start to swing the opposite way until he's essentially off screen. Like that. Okay. So you see now he's following this path. So just like that, I've got him starting to swing on the web. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some fun with this and start to give him some independent movements of his head and his body parts using that puppet warp tool. Okay? So let's go back and choose the puppet warp. You see I've got the pin still. And let's go ahead and move his head a little bit forward. Maybe move his pelvis around just to give a little bit more movement. Maybe I'll send this leg, try not to break the leg. Okay. Just a little bit of movement there. Maybe I'll mess with his shoulders a little bit. All right, so he's going to have just a little bit of movement right here. Let's go ahead and adjust some more keys because he's lagging behind. So maybe this is where this knee will start to kick up. Move those pins into position. So this is a very similar technique, guys, that you would see, motion comics. About here. Try not to break it too much. Go ahead and I'll turn his head towards it a little bit. giving him subtle movement. He's off screen here, so it's really not going to be too big a deal. But I want to get subtle movement to his body parts. All right. So really, just that quickly, we've added some puppet animation to it all. Now, what really is going to make the difference here, though, okay, let me go ahead and deactivate my puppets. What's really going to add quite a lot of cool animation to this, though, is turning on the blurs so that any kind of quick movement is blurred. Let's go ahead and turn on the city again. Okay, I'm going to turn this down to a quarter quality just so it will play, say, fit. And let's hit the space bar and see our progress. He's a little deformed, but that's okay. And then he'll slowly start to go real time. Now, if he's going too slow, we could always just change the timing of that as well. He's going a bit too slow. All right, so what I'm going to do, watch this, I'm going to take my shape layer here. That's something else I'd like to do here too, is maybe at about half a second here, I'm going to go ahead, shape, key the path there. Then at 0, this guy, this one at the end, okay, I can actually make it the illusion of it shooting out. Now it's too big. Let's turn it back down to 10. But the movement's too slow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a time stretch on the shape layer first. Maybe I'll make it 50% its time, so it's now down to 6. I'm going to select the Spider-Man layer here. Layer, time stretch. Again, I'll go 50% on this. Okay. Which means now our composition can be moved back down now instead of 12 seconds to 6 seconds. I mean, he's swinging a lot quicker now. Now let's see it play back, hit the spacebar. There, now you can see his motion blur. Now obviously if we had a better posed character, we could deform him. Like I said, if I used Photoshop to cut the pieces of him apart, I can get some better animation. I know it's kind of sloppy, but you see just how that's working. I mean, in reality, I could probably time stretch it even more. Let's do that. Oops. Time stretch, let's say 30%. Got to do it to both layers though, because they're synced together. And I could even do a shortcut of the composition and just have it end right there without having to change the composition. There, now you see him blurred as he's flying through. Now, if I really wanted to have some cool fun here, watch this layer, new, whoops, adjustment layer. Oh no, I'll do a shape layer. Let's see here, shape layer, adjustment layer, shape layer, adjustment layer. Let's go with shape layer. No, that's not what I want. Oops. I wanted a solid. My bad. New solid. Let's go ahead and make this be a color that is in here, like the color of this light. So I just used an eyedropper. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is, with the shape layer, I'm going to grab the pen tool here, and I'm going to just make the illusion here of, think of a street light or something like that. Now that shape layer, what's cool is I can come into the mask of it, open up the mask and add a little bit feather. Just soften that. So I'm going to make it look like he's swinging into a light shining down. The problem is it's too intense. So let's change the blending mode of this to being like an overlay. Now you see, it's there, but it's subtly there. Maybe overlay is too little. Let's get maybe lighten. Now that's too much. So this is just like, again, if you were going to do this in Photoshop, ads. Now add looks good. I like add, but it's too much. So I'll just bring the opacity down. There, see that? Now I could do the invert and actually make the other parts darker, but I'm going to go with light because when he swings by that light now, he's going to get lit. See that? So he's now swinging into the light. In fact, now that I do that, I'm going to invert. See that? I'm going to invert it. And instead of going with a light solid, let's go to the solid settings. Let's change this to being a darker bluish purple. Something like that. And change the blending mode. So again, instead of lighting that part, I'm going to darken the part that he's not swinging in. So you see now he's in the light, but then he's out of the light. See that? And that's pretty much, like I said, now I can keep adding to this. I could, come in and add other animatable elements to this. Like I could maybe have, a single car driving by here just by cutting out a car in Photoshop and animating it moving down the street. If I find the correct angle, I could do any number of things to add more animation to this little shot. In the end, though, if you just save it, just make sure you save it as an After Effects file. Okay, so Animated Spider-Man. And that's the After Effects file. But remember, the After Effects files do not hold any content. It's just a project folder. So when it's time to do this, we're going to have to export to the media encoder to put it in a video form. After Effects is not video, okay? It is a project file. So this launches my media encoder, and it will pop up here once it does its dynamic server link. But remember, you can add audio to this, sounds of the city at night, especially if you add moving cars, or maybe you have a police car with its lights flashing, which you can animate and key pretty easily. Why aren't you coming in here? Let's try that again. File. Export. Add to Adobe Media Encoder Q. There it is right there. And remember, the preferred output is an H.264. And now it's bringing it. It just took it a second. Change it, of course, to H.264. Verify the source is a 1920 1080 or what other compression type you require. Make sure the name and the file location are set up correctly. And I'm just going to kill it because I got two loaded up here. Let's get rid of the one. Again, I'm done with Photoshop, so I could close that off if I wish. Because I'm recording, obviously, my video is, I'm recording this session, so my RAM is a little tasked as far as working quickly here. But in the end, right, you would just set up the H.264, make sure it's the correct matching source or other compression type. Again, YouTube, Facebook, 1920, 1080, or Twitter, whatever you're doing it for. And the file name and location is correct. Very important to double check those. But in a nutshell, guys, that's pretty much what the tutorial is. Like I said, we'll get it posted up, and I hope you guys have some fun. Remember, if you ever want to check this out, There are tutorials out there on how to do what's called motion comics. So if you just say, you know, motion comic tutorial on YouTube, you can find, motion comics, Photoshop to After Effects tutorial recaps. There's one there that shows you how to do these motion-based comics. Some of them use Puppet Warp. See, here's how to make motion comics, part 1. And so there are other resources out there that kind of show you how to do this. Some will cut apart the character, and then you'll have like arms and legs separate. If you ever want to check out another tutorial that kind of talks about how to do that, you can check out how to animate a character from Photoshop using After Effects, which is in my YouTube channel. So that's pretty much all I got. Have some fun, guys, and I look forward to see what you can do. Thank you.